kind to join us. Maggie, I want to start with you first, because you are a paid-up party member of the Conservative Party, aren't you?
Absolutely.
With a very conservative name, Maggie, of course. Yeah. How are you feeling about what's transpired over the last week and finally the knowledge that we have Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister?
I was very, very disappointed about Liz Truss and very worried, actually, unsettled. But when I heard Rishi speak, he was standing at the podium, and I just relaxed completely, and I thought, I trust this guy. He's down to earth, he's empathetic, he really does understand what's going on, and I think he's going to be great for this country, and I'm absolutely confident that he will sort it.
Do I sense that you perhaps felt that Liz Truss wasn't right for the country then?
I commend her enthusiasm. I think her heart was in the right place, but unfortunately things went awry, and I think too quickly, too soon. It wasn't measured. With Rishi, I feel he's stable, he's 100% reliable, and I trust him. And that was an instant feeling just watching him in action and hearing his words.
So that's the view from the true blue. To those of you who are not so dyed in the wool, Dennis, for example, what are your thoughts at the moment about how you're feeling in the new
I
government?
actually echo a lot that Maggie said. I feel that the turmoil, chaos, whatever you'd like to call it, over the past 6 months or whatever, has been absolutely horrendous for the country. And from a personal perspective, myself doesn't affect so much, but I've got children and I've got grandchildren and they've got mortgages, and the instability of the market is a big concern. And therefore, I think Rishi coming in, who is really financially astute, is a safe pair of hands, and hopefully over the next 2 years, up to the next election, he can steady the ship, and our children and grandchildren can have a bit more stability so they can plan their future.
Jim, finally turning to you, I mean, your thoughts. And the other thing I want to throw into the mix is, do any of you think that, you know, rather than the third Prime Minister in, you know, as many months practically, we should be thinking about a general election?
Well, no, I think Rishi coming into... I think he should have been there before Liz Truss anyway. It was my thoughts. I think first and foremost, he is a businessman. And I think really the country needs a businessman to run it. We are in dire straits, really. The pandemic, you know, and the money that's been thrown at the pandemic. It needs, again, we keep saying a steady pair of hands, but basically we do need a complete businessman to run this country.
You've spoken like a true businessman, because you are indeed a businessman.
I am, yeah.
Mitchell's Carpets.
That's right. But, you know, and I feel that, you know, I've got nothing against Liz Truss, I've got nothing against a woman Prime Minister in general, because I think Maggie Thatcher was one of the best businessmen in the, you know, in history. But, you know, Liz Truss just wasn't up to the job, and she tried to do far too much, far too soon, and it just obviously just threw back in her face, you know.
Well, look, we'll get your reactions to Rishi Sunak's first Prime Minister's questions afterwards, but for now I'm going to thank our expert panel and throw back to you in the studio, and you'll come and join us, I think, in another half an hour's time or so once he's stepped off his feet in the Commons.
Yeah, Matthew, we will do. We'll get voters' reaction to what Rishi Sunak has to say in his first PMQs in the Commons. It's starting in around 10 minutes' time. We're going to bring in some members of Parliament now to get their thoughts on what the new PM needs to do to make his mark at midday. We're joined now from central London by the Conservative MP Nikki Aitken, and with me here in the studio, Labour's Ian Murray, who is the Shadow Secretary of State for Scotland, and the Scottish Party's MP for Glasgow East, David Linden. Good to see you all. Thank you so much for joining us. Nikki, I'll come to you first in the big screen. What's the big thing you want to hear from Rishi Sunak today? What do you think he's got to do to hit the ground running?
Well, that's exactly what he did yesterday, to provide Parliament, but more importantly, the country, with the reassurance that he knows the huge economic crisis that we are in, and that he has the answers with his cabinet to ensure that we do get out of this crisis and make sure that we can continue then to grow the economy and to safeguard our public services.
You mentioned, him providing answers. Not sure how many we're going to get that are concrete for the public until the 17th of November. Ian Murray, that fiscal statement on Halloween has now been upgraded to a full autumn statement on the 17th of November. That's another 2.5 weeks for the public to wait. The markets haven't reacted. There doesn't seem to be any panic at the moment. We're keeping an eye on them. What's your reaction to this further delay?
Well, the government have refused to publish any official statistics from the Office for Budget Responsibility, or if you get an autumn statement or a budget, you would normally get a red book that has all the figures in there. And until we get that, nobody can really assess the real chaos and damage to the economy that this government has caused. And I think the figures are pretty dire, which is why it's probably been delayed. And what I want to hear from Rishi Sunak at Prime Minister's question is an explanation about his strategy, which is what he said in the summer about taking money from more deprived areas and putting it into the Conservative Shire areas. I want an apology for what's been done to the economy over the last few years. This isn't just to do with Ukraine. Inflation was happening when he was Chancellor, and of course the former Prime Minister called it piff-paff when he was asked if he had concerns about inflation. So an apology would be a good start, I think, for all the people across the country that are struggling to pay their mortgages, struggling to pay their energy bills, and look at the cost of living and wonder how they're going to get through the winter.
David, what would you like to hear from the new Prime Minister? He's talked a lot about compassion. He's also talked a lot about difficult decisions ahead. And I was just talking to a Conservative members panel before, and we were discussing how pragmatism and compassion are a ready mix at the moment.
Well, I mean, I think it's bizarre to hear about compassion when he's just appointed a Home Secretary who had to resign 6 days ago for a major security breach and who is intent on pursuing a plan to deport vulnerable refugees to Rwanda. What I want to hear from Rishi Sunak fundamentally is that he's going to stand up and say that he's off to the palace to dissolve Parliament and call a general election. This is the second Conservative Prime Minister we've had in 7 weeks, another Tory Prime Minister that Scotland didn't vote for. He has no democratic legitimacy. The best thing that he can do now is call a general election and allow people to have their say, because it's quite clear to me that after 12 years of Tory austerity that has caused something in excess of 335,000 deaths, excess deaths, according to the Glasgow Centre for Population Health, that this austerity government is not something that people in Scotland want. We've not voted majority Conservative since the 1950s. Rishi Sunak has no mandate in Scotland and he must call a general election.
David, I don't think you're going to get the answer you want when it comes to a general election.
We often don't with Conservatives in London.
Yeah, well, we might, though, get some answers on the situation regarding Suella Braverman, reappointed as Home Secretary, as you pointed out, after breaching the ministerial code and resigning. That was just 6-7 days ago now. And Nikki, your thoughts on that? Because it was described as unfortunate by a guest earlier, but Rishi Sunak will have seen this controversy coming, and many people will be thinking, what's gone on behind the scenes for him to reappoint her? Do you think he'll shed any light on that today? An urgent question is being asked by Labour after PMQs. Oh, Nikki, apologies, we can't hear you. We'll just fade up your microphone. No, I think it's our end, Nikki.
OK, the Prime Minister was very clear yesterday in his speech that he is determined to unite this Conservative Party and ensure that his cabinet it represents the whole of the party. And that's what he's done. And Suella made a mistake. She admitted it last week. She resigned. And now she's back because the Prime Minister has full faith in her. And let's see how she responds as Home Secretary. She was doing, a sterling job, and I'm sure she will continue to do so now with her brilliant team.
It's such a controversial appointment, though. Could this be the Prime Minister's first U-turn?
Look, the Prime Minister was very clear. We are a very broad church in the Conservative Party, and if we are going to unite and if we are going to do what we have to do to ensure that this country comes out of this economic crisis, we have to have all the talents from across the party. And Suella was a leadership contender.
Nobody else. David Linden, the SNP's MP for Glasgow East, is shaking his head in incredulity here in the studio.
This is not about a breadth of talent across the Tory party. This is a grubby deal that's been done in Westminster on Sunday night for Suella Braverman Braverman to come out and support Rishi Sunak, and he's had to reward her.
Is that not just politics, though? Because Rishi Sunak has to unite the Conservative Party, and to unite the Conservative Party, he needs people on his side to get legislation through Parliament. These deals are always done, regardless of what
Not at all.
party,
I mean, part of the problem here is what we're seeing is a recycling of failed former ministers. And we've seen Rishi Sunak, who got a fine during Partygate. He broke the rules. We've seen Suella Braverman, who obviously had to resign as a result of a security breach. She is the Home Secretary in charge of security, and 6 days later, she's back in charge of that. You wouldn't put an arsonist in charge of putting out a fire, and that's exactly what we're seeing Rishi Sunak do.
I think what you've seen today on every single political programme and news programme this morning is Conservative cabinet members and indeed Conservative MPs defending the indefensible again. I mean, they're well practised at it. They've been doing it for 3 years now, and now they're defending this decision. And it isn't a reshuffle, it's a recycling. It's the same old people in the same old jobs for the same old tired Conservative Party, and really we need an election to clear all of this out and start again.
A lot of these points are going to come out in PMQs, which is getting underway in a couple of minutes' time. Our political editor, Beth Rigby, has joined us in the studio as we build up to that. There we go, a full House of Commons now. There are a few spaces earlier, but we're just a couple of minutes away. Beth, what do you think we're going to see from Rishi Sunak?
Well, I think from Rishi Sunak, he's going to try to continue what he's already begun, which is this is a new era, this is a new way of doing business, and it will be all about trying to be strong and stable, to use one of those terms from Theresa May, after the absolute chaos we've seen in recent weeks. I think from Sir Keir Starmer, it will be quite simple. He will be saying, you have not got legitimacy, you cannot change the Prime Minister twice in 7 weeks without asking the public what they think about it. I imagine Mr Sunak will say, I'm sticking to the 2019 manifesto, and you heard him on the streets at Downing Street when he said it wasn't one person's manifesto, it was the Conservative Party, i.e. saying this is not Boris Johnson's mandate, it is also mine as well, and I will stick to that agenda and not stray from it. So those might be the battle lines. I think the Suella Braverman issue is a real issue, and I think it will come up. I've already got a source from the Home Office saying that people are livid that she has been reappointed, given that she was sacked just 6 days ago for a security breach in which she broke the ministerial code. Now, even one person inside Number 10 told me last night they thought it was a mistake to reappoint her. Why did Rishi Sunak do it? I think there was a number of issues. One, she is a flag bearer on the right of the party. He probably wanted to bind her into the immigration issue, which is so vexing for that particular wing of the party, and also keep her close and keep her in line with him and his cabinet. But Labour have asked for an urgent question about the reappointment after Prime Minister's questions. They've also written to the Cabinet Secretary saying that they want an investigation. One source, and I haven't confirmed this, has told me that Simon Case advised against that. I don't know if that's correct. I need to check that with Downing Street, but it gives you a sense of some of the turmoil behind the scenes around this decision, and you can see that the opposition parties are using this to attack Rishi Sunak pretty fiercely just 24 hours or less than that into the job.
Well, we've got around 10 seconds until midday and the start of PMQs. Less than that, it is in fact midday. We are expecting Rishi Sunak to stand up in a few minutes' time to start answering those questions. We're on a wide shot. My eyes aren't too good, but I think it's Kemi Badenoch talking there at the moment. This delayed fiscal statement now, a full-on autumn statement on the 17th of November. Beth, that will come up as well.
Yes, and that decision was taken because Rishi Sunak and his Chancellor now think because the markets have become calmer, gilt yields are falling, that's the cost of government debt is falling, the interest rate expectations are also falling, so they think they've got a bit more manoeuvrability. You remember Kwasi Kwarteng, the former Chancellor, actually initially put this statement at November 23rd. He then had to bring it forward because of market panic. So it's really going back to giving to where it once was, more or less, and giving Rishi Sunak a little bit more time. Just wondering if he came in there, SJ, because there was a bit of a cheer. I think he might be, can't quite see at his seat. But I'm sure that that will also come up at the moment, the cost of living crisis, the economic chaos inflicted by Liz Truss on the country.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker,
can I just say, don't damage the furniture. Cheer him by all means, but don't damage. Come on. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
I'd like to congratulate the Prime Minister on his new post, and indeed as being the first Prime Minister of a South Asian heritage, which I think will be a cause of great pride among many of my constituents. I also have some pride in welcoming a fellow Saints Southampton supporter into number 10. During his prime ministerial campaigns, the last prime ministerial campaign he ran, he pledged to prohibit any development of onshore wind, which is now the cheapest form of power available to us in the country. Now he is Prime Minister. Will he change his mind on that point? Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable gentleman for his kind words and look forward to seeing him at St Mary's. Although I know my friend, the Leader of the House, may have something to say about our love of Saints. Look, when it comes to energy policy, I stick by what we said in our manifesto, Mr. Speaker. The important thing is, though, to focus on our long-term energy security. That means more renewables, more offshore wind, and indeed more nuclear. That's what this government will deliver.
I'm surprised, Mr. Speaker, to be asking the question, and I know you're shocked, Mr. Speaker, too, because I know that you, like many people, thought I would have already been offered a ministerial post.
Let me tell you, I didn't hold my breath. Philip Davis.
Go figure, as Joe Biden might say. Can I congratulate my right honourable friend on becoming Prime Minister? He's absolutely the right person for the job, and I wish him every success in post, and as he knows, he's got my full support. His two immediate predecessors made levelling up a key part of their agenda. Would he reaffirm his commitment to levelling up and start, as he means to go on, by approving the Levelling Up Fund bid for Bingley in my constituency?
Well, I'm grateful to my honourable friend for his warm remarks. I can confirm he must be the only person, Mr. Speaker, who texted me to say that he did not want a job in the last 24 hours. But I can give him my cast-iron commitment to levelling up, particularly in Yorkshire, which he and I share. Obviously, he'll know I can't comment on individual bids, but by the end of the year, an announcement is expected on the success, and I wish him every luck with that.
Let's come to the Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and may I welcome the Prime Minister. The first British Asian Prime Minister is a significant moment in our national story. And it's a reminder that for all the challenges we face as a country, Britain is a place where people of all races and all beliefs can fulfil their dreams. That's not true in every country, and many didn't think that they would live to see the day when it would be true here. It's part of what makes us all so proud to be British. Was his Home Secretary right to resign last week for a breach of security?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, can I thank the honourable gentleman for his kind and indeed generous welcome to the dispatch box. I look forward to Prime Minister's question time with him, and I know that we will have, no doubt, robust exchanges, but I hope that they can also be serious and grown up. So I look forward to it. Well, he asked about the Home Secretary. The Home Secretary made an error of judgment, but she recognised that. She raised the matter and she accepted her mistake. And that's why I was delighted to welcome back into a united cabinet that brings experience and stability to the heart of government. And let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, what the Home Secretary will be focused on. She'll be focused on cracking down on criminals, on defending our borders, while the party opposite remains soft on crime and in favour of unlimited immigration.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Prime Minister stood on the steps of Downing Street and promised integrity, professionalism and accountability. But then, with his first act, he appointed a Home Secretary who was sacked by his predecessor a week ago for deliberately pinging around sensitive Home Office documents from her personal account. Far from soft on crime, I ran the Crown Prosecution Service for 5 years. I worked with Home Secretaries to take on terrorists and serious organised crime. And I know firsthand how important it is that we have a Home Secretary whose integrity and professionalism are beyond question. So, have officials raised concerns about his decision to appoint her?
Mr. Speaker, I just addressed the issue with the Home Secretary, but he talked about fighting crime. I would hope, Mr. Speaker, I would hope that he would welcome. I would hope that as we look forward, he would welcome the news today that there are over 15,000 new police officers on our street. And the Home Secretary will be supporting them to tackle burglaries. While the party opposite will be backing the lunatic protesting fringe that are stopping working people going about their lives.
Keir Starmer.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I listened carefully. That was clearly not a no. We can all see what's happened here. He's so weak, he's done a grubby deal, trading national security because he was scared to lose another leadership election. There's a new Tory at the top, but as always with them, party first, country second. Yesterday, on the steps of Downing Street, he also admitted what the whole country knows. The Tories have crashed the economy and now somebody has to pay for their mess. I say it shouldn't be working people who've been hammered time and again by this lot, but those with the broadest shoulders must step up. Does he agree?
No. Well, Mr. Speaker, the honourable gentleman talked about party first and country second. Perhaps he could explain to us why it was a few years ago he was supporting the member for Islington North. Mr. Speaker, my record is clear. When times are difficult in this country, I will always protect the most vulnerable. That is the values of our compassionate party. We did it in COVID and we will do that again.
Mr. Speaker, he says he'll protect the most vulnerable. Let's test that. The government currently allows very rich people to live here but register abroad for tax purposes. I don't need to explain to the Prime Minister how non-dom status works. He already knows all about that. It costs the Treasury £3.2 billion every year. Why doesn't he put his money where his mouth is and get rid of it?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I have been honest. We will have to take difficult decisions to restore economic stability and confidence. And my honourable friend, the Chancellor, will set that out in an autumn statement in just a few weeks. But what I can say, as we did during COVID, we will always protect the most vulnerable. We will do this in a fair way. But what I can say, I am glad, Mr. Speaker, that the party opposite, the honourable gentleman, has finally realised that spending does need to be paid for. It is a novel concept for the party opposite. This government is going to restore economic stability and we will do it in a fair and compassionate way.
I know he's been away for a few weeks, but he should have listened to what's been going on the last 2. But anyway, I have to say, I'm surprised he's still defending non-dom status. He pretends he's on the side of working people, but in private he says something very different. Over the summer, he was secretly recorded at a garden party in Tunbridge Wells, boasting to a group of Tory members that he personally moved money away from deprived areas to wealthy places instead. Rather than apologise or pretend that he meant something else, why doesn't he now do the right thing and undo the changes that he made to those funding formulas?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I know the right honourable gentleman rarely leaves North London. But if he does, he will know that there are deprived areas in our rural communities, in our coastal communities, and across the south, and this government will relentlessly support them, because we are a government that will deliver for people across the United Kingdom. But Mr. Speaker, he mentioned the last few weeks. I am the first to admit that mistakes were made, and that's the reason I am standing here. But that is the difference between him and me. This summer, I was being honest about the difficulties that we were facing. But when he ran for leader, he promised his party he would borrow billions and billions of pounds. I told the truth for the good of the country. He told his party what it wanted to hear. Leadership is not selling fairy tales. It is confronting challenges, and that is the leadership the British people will get from this government.
Mr. Speaker, I think everyone should watch the video and make their own minds up. In public, he claims he wants to level up the north, but then he boasts about trying to funnel vital investment away from deprived areas. He says one thing and does another. But they're shouting. They're not my words. They're not my words. They're the words of the former chair of the Tory party, sacked yesterday for telling the truth about the Prime Minister. Even his own side know he's not on the side of working people. That's why the only time he ran in a competitive election, he got trounced by the former Prime Minister, who herself got beaten by a lettuce. So why doesn't he put it to the test, let working people have their say and call a general election?
Well, it'll take a long time to get through this paper if we carry on like this, Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, he talks about mandates, about votes, about elections. It's a bit rich coming from the person who tried to overturn the biggest democratic vote in our country's history. Our mandate is based on a manifesto that we were elected on, to remind him an election that we won and they lost. A mandate that says we want a stronger NHS, better schools, safer streets, control of our borders and levelling up. That is the mandate that I and this government will deliver for the British people.
Heather's not even asked her a question. You want more? Come on, Heather.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to congratulate my right honourable friend and new Prime Minister, and also to thank our previous Prime Minister for the straightforward way she has handled her resignation, and I wish her and her family well for the future. Would my right honourable friend please use this, his first appearance of the dispatch box, to make it clear to the British Medical Council and the British Dental Association that, as well as training, more training spaces opening up, that they must allow new doctors and dentists to work in the UK so that the good people of South Derbyshire can get treatment on the NHS?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for her question. She's absolutely right. I'm pleased that there are 3,500 more doctors and over 9,000 more nurses working this year than last. But she's right, and we are working to simplify the registration for dentists in particular that are not trained here to practice here, and that's how we'll help deliver a long-term workforce plan for the NHS and ensure everyone can get the care they need.
Let's come to the leader of the SNP, Ian Blackford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I congratulate the new Prime Minister on becoming the first British Asian to hold the office. The significance and the symbolism of this achievement is to be warmly welcomed by everyone. Mr. Speaker, yesterday on the steps of Downing Street, the new Prime Minister promised to bring, and I quote, compassion to the challenges that we face today. So, on his first full day in the job, let's put that to the test. A winter of uncertainty is coming, and next April will see a cliff edge moment. Millions face a double whammy as the energy price guarantee is cut off, while households are hit by austerity 2.0 and a real terms cut to social security benefits that many rely on to survive. If people are actually to trust the new Prime Minister's words about compassion, will he today reassure people and guarantee that benefits will rise in line with inflation in his upcoming budget?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I thank the Right Honourable Gentleman for his, again, kind remarks. And what I can tell him is my record on this is clear. Through the difficult times that we faced in this country through COVID, I always acted in a way to protect the most vulnerable. That's because it is the right thing to do, and those are the values of our compassionate party. And I can absolutely reassure him and give him that commitment that we will continue to act like that in the weeks ahead.
Yeah, Blackford. There we go.
Well, Mr. Speaker, let's test that, because as Chancellor, the Prime Minister slashed universal credit and presided over the worst levels. Well, you know, for the hard of hearing on the Tory side, I might remind them that universal credit was cut by £20 a week and presided over the worst levels of poverty in North West Europe. So I hope that he has learned from his mistakes and guarantees that benefits will rise in line with inflation. But speaking of mistakes, yesterday the Prime Minister appointed a Home Secretary who was forced to resign only last week for breaching the ministerial code, and who boasted that she dreamed of sending vulnerable asylum seekers to Rwanda. We all know why he appointed her: a sleazy backroom deal to shore up his own position. Far from being a fresh start, this is a return to the sleaze and scandal and ghosts of cabinets past. The Prime Minister promised to govern with integrity and humility. So if he has an ounce of either, will he admit his mistake and sack the Home Secretary without the delay?
Mr. Speaker, I was pleased to actually have a call last night with the First Minister of Scotland. It was important that I spoke to her on my first day in office, because I wanted to express my desire to work constructively with the Scottish Government so that we can work together to deliver for the people of Scotland, and that is what I plan to do. And indeed, I hope crime is one of the things that we can collaborate on, because he will know that violent crime is rising in Scotland and police numbers are falling, whereas here we are increasing police numbers, Mr. Speaker. But I look forward to working with the Scottish Government on our shared challenges, because I believe in a strong United Kingdom.
Dr. Andrew Morris.
Mr. Speaker, what a pleasure it was to welcome the Prime Minister to my constituency in the summer. He will know one of the burning issues in my constituency is the proposed waste incinerator at Westbury. With the government rightly reviewing its air quality targets, can I ask my right honourable friend to signal his intent to continue promoting public health, net zero and the environment by placing a moratorium on any more unwanted, unnecessary, toxic waste burners?
Prime Minister. I can tell my honourable friend, I know he's been a vociferous campaigner on this issue, as I learned over the summer. He'll know that local authorities determine these issues, but also to reassure him that all large incinerators in England must comply with strict emission limits and only receive permits if plants don't cause any damage to human health. And hopefully that is reassuring for him.
Caroline Lucas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister's reckless predecessor took a wrecking ball to nature, prompting millions of members of the RSPB, the National Trust and the Wildlife Trust to rise up in opposition. Yesterday, he promised to fix her mistakes, as well as to uphold the party's 2019 manifesto. So if he is a man of his word, will he start by reversing the green light she gave to fracking, since it's categorically not been shown to be safe, and instead maintain the moratorium that was pledged in that very manifesto that he has promised to uphold?
Well, I've already said I stand by the manifesto on that. But what I would say is that I'm proud that this government has passed the landmark Environment Act, putting more protection for the natural environment than we've ever had, with a clear plan to deliver. And I can give the honourable lady my commitment that we will deliver on all those ambitions. We will deliver on what we said at COP, because we care deeply about passing our children an environment in better state than we found it ourselves.
Emma Bain.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too would like to welcome the Prime Minister to his place. Farmers in my constituency of Clwyd South are delighted that after 20 years they are once more able to sell Welsh lamb to the US market. Would the Prime Minister comment on the size and prospects of this market for our world-beating Welsh lamb?
Mr. Speaker, I congratulate my colleague on the fantastic achievement. I can tell him that market is worth, I think, something like almost £40 million over the first few years. Enormous boost for our lamb farmers. I would just encourage the 300 million US consumers to give Yorkshire Swaledale a lamb a look in as well. But I know he and I, if we disagree on that, are united on the fact that we will unequivocally back British farming and British farmers.
Janet Davey. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is certainly a topsy-turvy Tory government. A few days ago, I was going to put my question to the former Prime Minister. But my inbox has been full of emails from constituents of Lewisham East writing to me about their desperate situation of their wages simply not going far enough. I'm also receiving emails about rents going up, energy prices going up, mortgages going up, and of course the cost of living is already up. This week, my constituents are writing to me demanding a general election, and I absolutely agree with them. So can the Prime Minister tell me and my constituents when there will be a general election?
Mr. Speaker, we've already addressed that, but I would say, as I said in the summer, I said inflation is indeed the enemy. It makes everyone poorer, it erodes savings, and that's why it will be a priority of our government to grip and reduce inflation and provide support to those who need it as we do.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This autumn, I'm launching my campaign to extend the Chilterns area of natural beauty across thousands of acres of scenic beauty, chalk streams and valuable habitats that happen to surround the wonderful town of Hitchin in my constituency. Would the Prime Minister join me in celebrating areas protected by AONB status and indeed support my campaign to potentially extend them in rural Hertfordshire?
Well, I thank my honourable friend, because I know this is a matter of great importance to him and his constituents, and he's right to highlight the benefit that natural parks and AONBs can bring to our lives and our well-being. I understand, actually, that Natural England is considering an extension of the Chilterns area of outstanding natural beauty, and I know my honourable friend will be vigorously taking up his campaign with them.
Richard Bagel. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I welcome the Prime Minister to his place. A nurse would have to work over 20,000 years in order to match the vast wealth of this Prime Minister. The Prime Minister knows only too well that the super-rich could easily afford to pay more in taxes. So rather than announce a new wave of cuts and austerity, wouldn't it be fairer for the Prime Minister to introduce wealth taxes on the very richest in our society?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we will always support our hard-working nurses, and that's why, as Chancellor, we reintroduced the nurses' bursary and provided more training and introduced, actually, very strong pay increases. But as I committed to previously, as we approach the difficult decisions that confront us, we will do so in a way that is fair and is compassionate, because those are our values, and that's what we will deliver.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome my right honourable friend's determination to be straight with people about the challenges we face as a country. Last week, the Care Quality Commission State of Care report, the state of care in England, showed our health system in gridlock. And I hear the same from my constituents, struggling to see a GP or waiting for treatment. So can I urge him to make unblocking the NHS a priority for him and his health secretary?
My honourable friend knows this subject obviously very well from her own experience, and I thank her for the work she did previously in the department. She's absolutely right about the challenge that confronts us. It's why we've put billions of pounds into busting the backlogs and the elective recovery fund, and are delivering funding and staffing to do that. But I look forward to working with her to deliver what we said in our manifesto, and that is a far stronger NHS.
Alan Smith.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'd add my own congratulations to the Prime Minister on his appointment. We might not agree on everything, but I think we can all agree a more diverse politics can only be to the good. Now, we on these benches believe that Scotland's best future is independence in Europe. Keep it coming. Mr Speaker, I really would urge the members opposite to show a little more respect. Because it's not just us. It's not just us. It's not just the SNP. And I will not be shouted down. It's not just the SNP. On the last opinion poll, 72% of the people of Scotland want back into the European Union. So if the Prime Minister is to maintain any credibility in the eyes of the people of Scotland, how long does he think he can deny Scotland's democracy?
Prime Minister. Well, Mr Speaker, I thank the honourable gentleman for his kind words. I mean, he talked about respect. I would gently urge him to respect the result of the referendum we had on this topic. But whilst we will disagree on that issue, I can tell him that I do remain committed to working constructively in partnership with the Scottish Government to deliver for the people of Scotland.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Last week I visited worried Year 3 and 6 pupils to hear their suggestions to tackle road safety, following a number of serious road accidents outside Boothroyd Academy in Dewsbury. They suggested the council should do more to help, that their parents should walk them to school to reduce traffic, and that commuters should slow down. Would my right honourable friend agree with me and with them that we all have a part to play in ensuring road safety outside our schools?
Can I say to my honourable friend, I think it's fantastic that he's engaging with his younger constituents at Boothroyd Academy on such an important issue, and I know they will welcome his commitment to supporting them. And I agree with him. There are various things we can do. There's an updated highway code which strengthens pedestrian access. Local authorities can introduce lower speed limits, and we're increasing the number of school streets which restrict motorised traffic at busy times. And I look forward to hearing progress on this issue from him.
Stephen Kinnock.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Yesterday, the Prime Minister stood on the steps of Downing Street and said that he wanted to restore trust. Yet in the past 24 hours, we've seen that he's prepared to shamelessly swap red boxes for political support. And there are real serious consequences to all this horse trading. So I'd like him to be clear on this point. Did he seek or receive any advice on security concerns about the Right Honourable Member for South Staffordshire before his appointment to the government yesterday, given that he was sacked in 2019 for leaking sensitive information relating to our national security?
Prime Minister. Well, Mr Speaker, he's talking about events that happened 4 years ago, and he's right that he raised the topic of national security, because members opposite 4 years ago were busily supporting the member for Islington North, who wanted to abolish the nuclear deterrent, who wanted to leave NATO, and who wanted to scrap our armed forces. We won't take any lectures on national security, Mr Speaker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I sincerely congratulate my right honourable friend and wish him every success. Over 3 years ago, my constituent Harry Dunn was killed in a tragic road accident, and I'd like to ask my right honourable friend to join me in congratulating Harry Dunn's family for the incredible campaign they've run for over 3 years, with huge support from all colleagues across the House on finally achieving justice for Harry.
Well, I pay tribute to my right honourable friend for her role, and indeed the former Foreign Secretary as well, and indeed colleagues from all over the House for the part they've played in bringing about this outcome. My thoughts are obviously with the family, and I join in her sentiments that this is very welcome.
Daisy Cooper.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. West Hertfordshire Hospital Trust in my area is still hoping to receive funds from the new hospitals programme, the same programme that is supposed to deliver the government's so-called 40 new hospitals. There's been a lot of speculation that the new Prime Minister and his Chancellor might seek to cut infrastructure projects. So can the Prime Minister confirm to me that my local hospital trust, as well as all of the other local hospital trusts that are set to benefit from the new hospitals programme, will in fact get that money? Yes or no?
Well, Mr Speaker, the Chancellor will set out our plans in the autumn statement shortly, but this is the government that put in place plans which will remain to significantly increase capital expenditure. And even though difficult decisions do need to be made, I think the country can rest assured that we will continue to invest in our future productivity and indeed invest in our public services like the NHS.
Wendy Moore.
Mr. Speaker, in my Aldridge Brown Hills constituency, we're at risk of 8,000 new homes being dumped in the constituency. Will my right honourable friend use the opportunity of this Prime Minister's question to reaffirm the government's commitment to protecting the Greenbelt and to adopting a really rigorous brownfield first policy?
Well, can I say thank you to my honourable friend for her question, and I can give her that assurance. She's absolutely right. We must protect our green belt, and we are adopting a brownfield first strategy. I'm pleased we had a record number of new homes built in the last year, but it's important that we build those homes in the right places.
Ruth Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Whilst welcoming the new Prime Minister to his place, we remember that law-breaking was the order of the day in Downing Street during the pandemic. We will never forget that this current Prime Minister was fined by the police for attending a birthday party hosted by his next-door neighbour. As both a witness and a participant to that law-breaking, if the Privileges Committee investigation into the former Prime Minister calls him to give evidence, will he fully cooperate?
Mr. Speaker, of course, and I addressed these matters earlier this year.
Michael Fabricant.
Mr. Speaker, you will know that I fought hard to bring back Boris. In '97, I campaigned for Kenneth Clarke and then for Michael Portillo. So I can't always get it right. But you know, I do know about the West Midlands. I know that the West Midlands Mayor very much welcomes the reappointment of the Levelling Up Secretary, and that he looks forward to working with our new Prime Minister. So may I just ask him, what is his vision for levelling up?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for the question, and what I can say is our desire is to ensure that people, wherever they live in our fantastic country, have enormous pride in the place they call home and every opportunity to succeed. And you know what? It is the fantastic Mayor Andy Street who is delivering that for his constituents in the West Midlands.
That completes questions.
Well, that brings to a close Rishi Sunak's first Prime Minister's questions as the country's new Prime Minister. Our political editor, Beth Rigby, was watching proceedings with me here in the studio. Beth, your overall impression?
My overall impression is that both men brought their A game, if you like. Rishi Sunak, who was looking quite sombre and serious in the street yesterday when he made his first address as Prime Minister, seemed very upbeat, very combative, very confident at the dispatch box there. Keir Starmer came in with some pretty devastating questions and also some pretty cruel put-downs, actually, in order to try and get Rishi Sunak on his heels. And I thought both men actually gave strong performances. For the Conservative backbenchers to see Mr Sunak kind of approach and really attack Prime Minister's questions in the way that at times Boris Johnson in the past did as well would have been a relief to them after some pretty difficult performances for Liz Truss. She only did 3, remember. But in terms of the substance of that, there were 2 themes that came out or 3 themes that came out, I think, for Keir Starmer. The first was on policy, that the reappointment of Suella Braverman is clearly highly controversial. That was his first question, while he welcomed Mr Sunak as being the first British Asian Prime Minister. He then went straight in with a very short question saying, was the Home Secretary right to resign last week? And you knew where that was going. Rishi Sunak tried to defend that decision, saying she recognised the error of judgment. I'm delighted to welcome her back. Then Keir Starmer came back with what was another difficult question, which was, were you advised by officials not to make this reappointment? Now, I have been told by one source that the Prime Minister was advised. I have to say I have not got that confirmed.
And it wasn't
from
confirmed by the
anyone
Prime Minister
in
either.
Downing Street.
He didn't answer.
Neither did the Prime Minister, and that was a significant point. He didn't answer that question. He dodged that question. So let's see how that one unfolds. There's an urgent question potentially soon as well. And then he moved on, Keir Starmer, to the kind of Labour attack lines I think we're going to see, which is that Rishi Sunak is a very wealthy man. He's out of touch. He brought up the issue of his wife's non-dom status. Rishi Sunak is aware that these questions are going to come at him and basically handled them pretty well. And when Keir Starmer brought up the issue of this footage in which Rishi Sunak had talked about moving money away from places in the north back to wealthier constituencies, this is an attack line that Labour will use again and again and again at him. He sort of stood up and said, I'm a Prime Minister that will tell the truth. So Rishi Sunak...
he said, I told my party hard truths when running. You told them fairy tales.
Exactly.
That was a lie, wasn't it?
So what he's saying is, stop trying to paint me as someone that doesn't tell the truth or tries to be too political. I am someone that does tell hard truths. This is my character. I am a politician of integrity. Thanks for finding the quote. I was trying to scroll down.
It's all right. I just turned over my page. It just happened.
It was very helpful. I couldn't quite find. I was going through my notes. So I think that is a clear attack line from Keir Starmer. The final thing, of course, was the issue of a general election, and the question of legitimacy, again, will come up again and again and again.
Yeah, Beth, I know you've got to go. Busy day for you as political editor. Beth Rigby, thank you. And don't worry, I've got the quotes here. We work as a team, Beth, don't you worry about that. Well, earlier on here on Sky News, the Chancellor Jeremy Hunt announced that delay to the financial statement. It was due to take place, of course, on Halloween, but it's now been pushed back until the 17th of November. Here's what he had to say earlier.
Our number one priority is economic stability and restoring confidence that the United Kingdom is a country that pays its way. And for that reason, the medium-term fiscal plan is extremely important, and I want to confirm that it will demonstrate debt falling over the medium term, which is very important for people to understand. But it's also extremely important that that statement is based on the most accurate possible economic forecasts and forecasts of public finances. And for that reason, the Prime Minister and I have decided that it is prudent to make that statement on the 17th of November, when it will be upgraded to a full autumn statement. And I've discussed this last night with the Governor of the Bank of England. He understands the reasons for doing that, and I'll continue to work very closely with him.
It's only 10 days since the Governor of the Bank of England said that having the government's plans first and then the interest rate decision on the 3rd of November was the correct order of events. By moving this until after the interest rate decision, aren't you just risking more uncertainty, more chaos, more market turbulence?
Well, there has been a lot of market turbulence, even in the last 48 hours. And the question is how you deal with that turbulence to make sure that the very, very important and very difficult decisions that I and the Prime Minister have to make are the right ones, decisions that stand the test of time and do the right thing for people at home who are worried about their mortgages, their jobs, the cost of living, the bills and so on. And for that reason, accuracy in the forecasts, both around public finances and economic growth, is very important. And that's why this is the right decision and a prudent decision.
Well, is it the right decision? Our economics and data editor, Ed Conway, is here with me now. When we're talking about continuity and calming the markets, how will this decision play into that wish by the new government?
Well, it's definitely related to it because, you've got to remember, this was brought forward originally. It was supposed to be, I think, the 23rd. It was originally going to be, later on in December or next year. Then it was brought forward by Kwasi Kwarteng to the 23rd of November. Then he brought it forward again to the 31st of October. And all of the point there was we were in a period of market turmoil. The government needed to get out there, it thought, and show that it was serious about bringing down the national debt. That kind of is where this starts. And the idea was to do that before the Bank of England met. Remember, it's meeting next week on Thursday to decide interest rates. It's the first big decision they've had, obviously, since all of this turmoil. The idea was to get in there before that, But since then, markets have calmed down quite a lot. So the rationale is basically markets are in a better place, and they haven't panicked today in the wake of this decision. Markets are in a better place, and also there is a kind of benign side to it. We've spent a lot of time recently talking about black holes, and what this basically means in practice is the government says it wants to get the national debt falling. At the moment, its current plans see it rising. That's worsened by the fact that interest rates out there that it has to pay, as well as the stuff we have to pay, are going up. So you have this bigger and bigger black hole all the time. Well, moving this back actually might help on that front. And why? Because all of these decisions are based on how big the OBR, the Office of Budget Responsibility, thinks the black hole is. And that's what we were going to get on Monday, and we would get a kind of sense of how much they would do in terms of austerity or whether it was tax rises to
We've still not seen any of those reports, have we?
No, exactly.
We're going to have to wait until the 17th of November.
And we will have to wait for that. But here's the thing, because the OBR report and the size of the black hole was, if it was going to come on Monday, it would have been based on that period when interest rates were really high. They've been really high in the last few weeks. Now, by delaying it for a few weeks, it means it can look at the period when interest rates are quite low. The size of the black hole doesn't look so big, so actually, potentially, there's less work that the government has to do in order to meet its target to get the national debt falling. So it could well be that this decision alone could reduce the amount of cuts that they feel are necessary in the next few months.
And just quickly, we've only got 30 seconds left. The Chancellor said that this is being upgraded. We're going to get a full autumn statement on the November the 17th. What does that mean?
I think it could be more extensive. So whereas before it was literally just to update the markets on what they were doing and to show they were serious, this time there could be more in the way of policies, whether it's what happens with spending, what happens with taxes, and also it's to try and underline that it's a normality. We're back to normality. That thing was going to be an emergency moment. This instead feels a lot more like we've had autumn statements before, so it feels a lot more like one of those. That's the idea anyway, and right now the key thing is markets do seem relatively calm. They're not panicking about this.
OK, Ed, I know you're going to keep an eye on those markets for us throughout the day. Ed Conway, our economics and data editor, the Chancellor, saying the best way to make sure that these difficult decisions stand the test of time is to push that statement back. That is coming on the 17th of November. Ed, thank you. Let's get more reaction now to PMQs. Our panel of voters are standing by in Dartford. They've been watching what's been happening. Let's go live to Sky's Matthew Thompson, who is in Dartford in Kent, testing opinions there this afternoon. Matthew.
Welcome to Dartford Golf Club. Dartford, of course, is the longest-running bellwether constituency in the country. Every election since 1964, the way Dartford has voted, the country has voted. So there's little better place in the entire country to come to test the waters of opinion. We've assembled a crack panel of local voters who are going to give us their thoughts on that Prime Minister's questions. Maggie, I'm going to start with you again, in fact, because you are the resident Conservative Party member here. What did you think? Did he inspire confidence, Mr Sunak?
I stand by what I said earlier. I feel uplifted, positive, optimistic, because here we have a man who knows exactly what he wants to do. He's very calm, the way he dealt with all the questions that were thrown at him. He stayed very positive, and I sensed a forward momentum. He's sort of going to let the handbrake off, and he will get things sorted. And I really trust this guy. He's got humility, he's got an awareness and a sensitivity, and he cares about people. And that came over when he stood at that outside number 10 and gave his speech.
Does anyone else I mean, Dennis, you said that you thought he inspired some confidence in you.
He inspired confidence. Very good batsman. The questions I felt he had the facts at his fingertips that he needed without too much detail. I thought he batted back questions and didn't fall for any of the traps.
But is he vulnerable to some of that spin bowling from Keir Starmer, to continue your analogy on things like, it's clear what Labour were trying to do there, to portray him as the sort of out-of-touch, rich Prime Minister whose wife, of course, until recently had non-dom status. Is he vulnerable to those attacks?
I don't think
so. I mean, how can you like ridicule a guy because he's earned money, he's come into money, doesn't suffer his judgment to run the country? I mean, what better would you want than someone who's rich and deserving and earned money
to actually run a country.
Does it make him out of touch, for example, with the lives of nurses, teachers, for example? I mean, Stefan, what are your thoughts on...
Not necessarily. I mean, we can't just dislike because somebody has worked hard and made so much money. I think he's not out of touch. He's someone who clearly, from what we saw earlier, understands what needs to be done. And a good example is the furlough scheme. He himself said that we didn't know what furlough was. It looks like probably started here in the UK, and it did go a long way to help a lot of people here in this country.
Definitely.
So I don't particularly feel like because you are a millionaire, for which you've actually worked hard for, means you're out of touch or you don't actually feel what a nurse or the teacher or the white man van wouldn't need or want.
And Keir Starmer, for example, I mean, does he inspire any confidence in you? I mean, a lot of people across the political spectrum have been demanding a general election. Would you like to see give Labour a turn, or?
It will be nice. It would be nice to have a general election, but this guy has only been there 2 days. 2 days in the job.
Yeah, they need to have a chance.
Yes,
don't they?
yes. Yeah. He needs to be given a chance. He seems to have the support from.
The last thing we can do, whatever the colour, in my opinion, is have a general election now or within the next year, because we've had so much unstable government, so much. We need stability, for good or for bad. And as the speech was going on, we saw the pound starting to rise, and to the markets, which are king, that we need that stability. And general election will just kill the country.
A general election would cost so much money, and we're trying to conserve money. And also, we've had enough of muddy waters, turbulent times. We need calm and stability, and Rishi Sunak presented that yesterday.
We've got to give him a chance. The country has to give him a chance now.
He's sincere. He's got a very strong family ethos from his growing up, his parents, probably quite humble, the fact they worked hard, put him through university, and family values are very important, and I think that's very significant that he has an appreciation. He also demonstrates humility.
One of the lines that Keir Starmer used there was, you know, same old Conservatives putting party before country, in the sense that, you know, he had given a job to Suella Braverman, who was sacked 6 days ago for leaking but handling state information insecurely.
You're going to have a certain amount of that.
Do you get that? Do you get that sense that this is the same old Conservative Party?
You're playing for a team. You're going to help your teammates to win, aren't you? If your teammates are going to help you win. If that's best for you, and that's best for your country, you're going to do that.
But
that's not wrong.
Stepped
down if it's good for everybody.
As soon as she knew she'd done wrong.
I think
but was there contrition there, I suppose?
I think what the difficulty we're having here, I mean, as an academia, integrity is very, very important. I mean, Sue Braverman left. Because she was in breach, she admitted that she was in breach of the ministerial code. It is not like, I mean, Peter Mandelson, he also left back in the days, but he came probably 2 or 3 years later, not 6 days. This is too short. And I'm thinking, yes, young Sunak, you are doing well. There was positive vibes in the chamber earlier, but there are things I need to look at very, very carefully.
I think it was a bit early.
I'm going to have to end you there. I mean, we could talk about this all day, couldn't we? It was fascinating to hear all your thoughts. Thank you ever so much. Guys, back to you in the studio. But that's the thoughts of the country's leading bellwether constituency. No better place to take the temperature.
Yeah, interesting stuff. Matthew, thank you, and thank you to your panel as well. You're watching Sky News. Coming up next, Kanye West dropped by companies like Adidas over his anti-Semitic remarks. We'll have the story for you.
I'm Inzamam Rashid, and I'm Sky's North of England correspondent, telling stories from this culturally rich region I call home.
It's going to become very similar to other places and lose its unique qualities.
It's steeped in history.
If the Taliban found your family, what would happen?
I think they're just going to straight away execute them.
There are issues of racism in all